or grow it. From the Stash Podcast.
Growers who are looking for that secret sauce usually are just missing something from their garden. And to help with that, we bring you the Stash Blend Premium Plant Additive. Stash Blend brings beneficial bacteria, silicon, seaweed, humic acid, and has enough macronutrition to help lower the dosages of your base feed too. Unleash your plant's true potential with Stash Blend Premium Plant Additive. Available at Growers House.
Thanks to AC Infinity for sponsoring this episode. They have the best grow tent kits on the market today. You get their ion board LED grow light, their grow tent, their ventilation system, clip-on fan, and their controller 69 to control it all. You also get their fabric pots, a trellis net, plant ties, and trimmers. Definitely a good price for all that you get in the kit. I'll have a link in the description section below so you can learn more about these grow tent kits, and the discount code THESTASH15 works on both Amazon and their website, acinfinity.com.
What's going on, boys?
Hey, back again.
Back at it. Podcast, baby.
Good to
We're
see
out
you.
Here.
Good to see
Las
you, boys.
Vegas, Nevada.
In
We are
person
live
once again.
from the Fighter
Another
House
week.
Studios.
Another week.
Yep.
Here we are. Feels good to do this, man. I love being able to be in your presence and feed off your enthusiasms. And
I'm telling you, man, like, and be able to have the in-between lumber breaks, like all these things, just kind of make it all happen. We got the mid-boys out here doing our thing. Inside joke.
inside joke. That's our joke.
That's
You
our
can't
joke.
take it.
You guys stay out of it. But it's really nice, man, especially like the weather's not too bad. Sweatshirt weather for me, always, no matter what. But personally right now, every time we're here, warm, cold, doesn't matter. This boy out here is damn near naked outside. I don't know what's going on.
Yeah, I was in the pool.
Yeah, he was in the pool at one point in December, literally.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah,
yeah.
it was
So
warm, though.
anytime there's just a glimpse of sun, he's out here just.
I get my tan on.
We were standing in the shade only for a picture. Did we go into the sun? Otherwise, he was I'm out there freezing. So it's like you get cold. You could get like every time I go outside, I'm trying to find some sort of way to be better. It's my shortcuts, so to speak.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you know, I absolutely love this place because at home it's freezing cold, and I come here and it's just like a nice little glimpse of paradise. The only downside is your healthcare system. That's really the only thing that's holding me back.
Yeah.
Because I remember when Wig hurt himself. And
just like yesterday.
That man didn't even, just like it was yesterday, that man couldn't go to the doctors because he didn't have insurance. And I just thought he represents millions of other Americans. And that worries me. That worries me. So I feel comfortable where I'm at with my public healthcare system, which is a step above horrible anyways. But I feel like your system is not that much better either.
Pretty much a
it's
mid
hot
boy with
garbage.
that. Yeah.
Shortcuts everywhere is what it feels like. Trying to save money, trying to
Make things easier, but not always getting good benefits.
right.
Sometimes. I think
What a
that's
great
the
idea
thing.
for an episode.
Wow, that'd be a good episode idea. We didn't talk
do you
about
think?
this.
Didn't know. Shortcuts in
We
the
should
garden.
do that.
You should avoid.
Man.
What do you think?
Oh my gosh, there's too many that I could list, man. There's too many that I could list. There's been a lot of things that people do that were bro science that they thought were working good, and some of these things were just shortcuts, and they didn't benefit nor hurt the garden. So those I wouldn't necessarily put into the mix. I'd rather say things that either were really good or really bad, and that'd be more my area. Any of you boys ever tried to speed up your growth of your plant by flipping into flower earlier and then switching back to veg?
Nope.
No, man, does it slow down the veg? What a stupid thing. I read it on a forum early on Roll It Up. The guy was like, yeah, I put it in for 2 weeks so it gets that stretch. The plants blow up, and then I put them back into veg. They blow up because they think they're in flower. They're going into flower, and those hormones kind of switch, and what the plant needs switches. So then when you go back to feeding it the veg nutrients, it may stress that plant out and slow down the growth. And that was one thing early on when I was just running 12 different individual cultivars and I'm trying to cash crop that I did multiple times. And I'm looking at the plant thinking, like, what's going on? And it's 25-gallon pot that I didn't veg very long in. And then I'm like, why am I not getting these results? And it's like, well, you can't just skip past all these things that everyone says you have to do with plants. But magically, this one plant, you don't have
It's like
to.
a get rich quick kind of thing. You know?
Yeah, I'm like,
It's
if I just flip
just
it,
a pyramid
bigger
scheme.
pots, but one light, it's going to be huge. And it's like, well, now I've vegged this for almost 6 months, and I'm going to yield comparable.
There is a number of things that you can do to, speed up the process, but or not necessarily speed up, but make it easier on yourself. But there's nothing that's going to speed up the process. But one of the biggest shortcuts that I would personally, remind people to avoid altogether is ignoring pest management.
That was gonna be mine. You took mine,
And you didn't even tell me
we
your
talked
list.
about
not
this
check
before.
for pests.
And you
right?
didn't, and you
Yeah.
didn't even tell me your list because you didn't want me to cheat.
Well, I think that falls into pest and stress. People who just don't pay attention to the plant.
Well,
They
yeah,
just let it grow.
very different though. Very different. If you're ignoring your pests, which I believe a lot of people do because they don't see them right away, and they just think, oh, I'm in a tent. It's, you ignore it. It's a shortcut. But the reality is that if you don't pay attention to your pests, if you're not overlooking your plant, if you're not being vigilant and diligent, that shortcut was temporary. Because now once you've got that infestation, goodbye to anything short. You're in for a long haul now.
So other than a short plant, and a short
Trying
yield.
to correct it. Yeah.
And a lot of people will not check for pests, right? It is a shortcut that, indoors you're less likely to come across pests than outdoors, right? So like there's been plenty of grows where I haven't checked for pests, right? But it's probably something you shouldn't do. You should probably check for pests because you're more likely to catch them and save your grow, right? So like I've had fungus gnats. I had an infestation so bad one time way back, and I didn't really know how to handle fungus gnats. Now I do. So before I knew how to handle them, I had an infestation so bad I killed off the plants, right? So like I seen a couple flying around, didn't have any yellow stickies. Seen some flying around. I was in, I think, early veg, and it was like it got really bad, and it got really bad, and then it got bad, and then it was like the plants were like suffering because of it. Like I didn't know how to handle them, and I ended up just wiping out the plants and getting rid of it. I was actually in cocoa. That's another thing. People are like, "Oh, you can't get pests. Pests aren't in cocoa. Fungus gnats don't go in cocoa. They can be in cocoa for sure."
You set up the right environment.
Speaking from experience.
Yeah, because it was horrible. So yeah, probably shouldn't not check for pests.
Checking
for pests every day when you're in there is just something I do all the time now because of I don't want that adverse effect of having to wipe out a grow. I mean, there's other pests that are a lot worse, right? Spider mites, thrips, russet mites, like all those things you really need to catch early.
I know so many growers who just live with thrips. Like their plants just have specks all over them. I'm like, those are thrips. Like, yeah, ain't a big deal.
They get stuck in the bud.
It's
Like
like
as the bud flowers.
And they
Gross.
jump, man. They literally, if you watch them and you're trying to get
yeah.
one, they'll just shoot away like fleas, man. It's disgusting. I don't want
consuming
any bugs in my anything.
Nothing.
Yeah.
One thing to add to that is I think that's often overlooked or a shortcut is not quarantining new plants. When
Just taking
the
them right
reason
in.
I had a mite issue, and they specifically came from a cut. I got a cut from a buddy, and I should have known better. It came from a dungy basement, kind of looked like Harry Potter's castle or something. There was like moisture everywhere. It was gross. And I took that cut and I just planted it right into my veg room. And it took me 2 years to finally get my stuff bug free. And that's specifically because I didn't think I should quarantine my plants. Now I refuse to buy cuts now. That's the shortcut. Is I'm not gonna buy
that's
cuts.
this new shortcut. And then you're missing out on,
And you're
on
missing
potential
out
thing.
huge.
But
Missing
you
out
get
huge.
PTSD from taking stuff in. I don't take in clones most times. I'll take cuts because I could do a full dunk. I'll drown them, waterboard them before they come into my space, It's just like there's things that people do for the shortcuts that make sense for their grow, and you can't knock everything, just like what you're doing there. It's like you don't have to deal with this because of it, but then you're missing out on the other side. I think it falls in the same thing with like nutrition. When I first started, I thought I could just run with the Lucas formula, 3-method, general hydroponic, boom, boom, boom. But I'm missing so much. The plants will grow. You could use almost anything and your plants will grow. I know people who are like, yeah, this is a nutrientless grow. It's like, what does that mean? Like, there's nothing in it. It's like the plant's wispy and the buds are larvae, but it grew. Yeah, the plant grew. At the same time, people will run a super, super simple regimen. They'll get 3 bottles of advanced nutrients and think they're good. And it's like, nah, it's a complete formula. Run the full thing. Or an organic soil where they're missing a bunch of super essential inputs. And it's like, this is where your nitrogen's coming from, bud. You decided to not do this one? Oh, this is detrimental. They're like, well, I want to save some money. I don't want to put all this stuff in or wait 2 weeks for it to cook. It's like, you have to. And that's the same thing, too, is myself. I'm like, I'm going to wait 10 days for my soil to be ready. When you're mixing and inoculating your own soil. I ruined an entire crop by transplanting 4 days early. Burnt everything up. It was a bunch of really good clones, and I put them in there, and they were just, they bounced back, but how long it took for them to bounce back was absolutely ridiculous, man. And that's because I was trying to have a shortcut. I'm like, 14 days? Kiss my ass. I'm going 10. It looks good. It's not hot. You know what I'm saying? I'm fine. I'm fingering them. Hey, it didn't burn me. The stupidest mentality. But it was early on when I first tried to switch to organics, and it was me thinking that I knew better than what others were doing. Because I'm like, that's bro science.
Yeah, taking shortcuts on nutrients is very risky, right? It can be real risky. It brings up one that I'm thinking of is blindly adding in organic inputs, right? A lot of people do it. People want to switch from bottles to organics, and they're just blindly adding in inputs, whether it be just a blend of organic inputs in one, and then adding in just a bunch of other things that they think is going to be beneficial. And then what's happening is folks are getting lockouts. What happens is if you have nutrients in excess of some nutrients, it's going to inhibit the uptake of other nutrients. So people are blindly adding things in, and all of a sudden they have an excess of calcium that's locking out other ones from being uptaken and stuff. So yeah, I mean, a lot of folks are getting away with just adding in an organic blend and getting to the grow. That's perfectly fine. But when you start adding in oyster flour, kelp, alfalfa meal, insect, when you have all these other inputs that you're just blindly adding in, that's when problems can really happen.
I think it was the same thing with the bottled nutrients. Like when I first started, I'm like, oh, I've got to get the best of the best. Let's go and get the bud candy. Let's get this sweetener. Let's get that sweetener. Oh, let's get this thing. The Gravity was one that was hot, which nobody uses anymore. Probably get shunned in the comment section. But you old caregivers know we used Gravity. And was it Superfrost or Permafrost from the same company that made Gravity? That was for my trichomes and my density. And I had numerous times where I had toxicity from adding things in that I didn't know had nitrogen in it too. And I'm like, oh, I didn't read the bottle. I just know my buddy said this is dope, and I got shiny object syndrome and bought it at the grocery store while I'm already using a complete nutrient formula. It's stuff that if you don't know the science behind the inputs and you don't know anything about the amendments you're dealing with, you're better off to just get a simple blend. And whether that be a few base nutrients in Stash Blend, shameless plug, or you're getting a craft blend from Build-A-Soil, or you're getting a 3-part step formula, keep it simple. Keep it easy. Because if you don't, and you add extra stuff into it thinking that you're just going to be skipping by what the rules and the recommendations say, I guarantee you're going to have bad results. I've seen it firsthand. 16 years of growing, 17. I'm at this point, I don't even want to stay along. I'm getting old. I think you learn some of the worst parts by trying to just skip the process. You have to get through the process. Same like with success. You got to go through the hurdles, just as a normal thing. With the garden, you see the result in a month or less, and you know, like, whew, well, I messed up. You can pivot quick if you're in a situation where you're using photo periods. Your plant could maybe survive, but if you're in a situation of autos, it's too far gone. You might have ruined that plant. You literally ruined your whole crop. So you got to really be cautious with the inputs and cautious with nutrition and know the formula a little bit before you start just throwing things in the pot.
Yeah. You good on that one? Good.
Yeah.
I think one shortcut, and it was really easy for me to come up with this list because these are all things that I've done. These are all things that I tried to do in order to find success. And the problem is that you kind of learn that the more you take your time and the more you pay attention to the plant and speak to the plant, you're going to get better results. And I think that's something that we avoid, or a shortcut or something we avoid. A shortcut that we do is overlook pruning. It is not hard to lose grasp on the bushiness of your plant. I've found over the years trying to maintain the canopy is beneficial. That's where your bud sites are. That's where you're going to get the most the flowers and reward. So I've learned to train horizontally. If you don't consider what's going on underneath the canopy, you can have a lot of weak growth. The plant can focus on trying to keep the flowers at the bottom of the plant healthy and full of vigor while taking that energy away from the top. Not to mention pests. If you're not pruning your plants, you're not taking care of all that foliage underneath your magic. It's a prime example, prime habitat for bugs.
Yeah, it's got like a ladder, little chutes and ladders there for your bugs to go from any soil. If you're spraying, they go right back and hide, come back as soon as it's clean. I was dealing with that with winged root aphids. And I was like, I'm good.
Yeah, that lack of airflow in the middle. I mean, hot spots, humid spots, right? Powdery mildew can most likely to form. So yeah,
bud rot potentially. There's so many issues that come into that. I think skipping through it, you're like, I don't need to train my plant. I'll put 20 of them in here, little ones. Do it like this. It's there's a big thought process of people that it's only about yield, but plant performance is big with training, just like human performance. If you don't train properly, proper nutrition, all these things, you're not going to be at your best. with the training, you're going to avoid a lot of bad things. You're going to be able to avoid a lot of these issues. And I think it's underestimated. People think it's only for yield. They think it's only to be able to increase for the, very focused precision stress to get better THC or terpenes. But IPM is even a part of plant training. That ladder to up and down from your media is literally what will keep you for months, for 2 years, fighting these bugs. Literally, mites will go and hide and come back in.
And that's exactly what they did. I wiped my whole garden out. I had no plants for like months, and then you'd put some plants in, and next thing I know, they're back.
And it's like, how? They just move and hide, And that's, people underestimate the power of training your plant properly. And I think, prime example, Northern Scrogger, he works his plants so meticulously. Everything, if you see his room, he's got 4 or 5 separate plants with beds that are all having their individual treatment. So he's in there not only paying attention to all the plants, taking care of bugs right away, but then also doing the proper training. You'll get the maximum everything from your plant in health and performance. I didn't pay attention to that early on. I really thought I could skip all that. I'm like, no, I'll just put 12 of them in at once. Why am I going to flower 4? You're an idiot. Look at all, my full now, bud. It's like, yeah, and all this underneath here, I have powdery mildew and wispy, crappy buds and mites. And it's like, oh, gosh. Bad early experiences.
Jeez. One that comes to mind for me is something you shouldn't do is just blindly assume the light output or blindly set the light distance. You know what I mean? Have some knowledge about it. I can't count the number of people that have hit me up and said, what's wrong with my plant? And it comes to find out it's the light being too close, too powerful of a light. And you ask them, hey, what do you have your light distance set to? Why did you set it to that? And they're just like, oh, it seemed like the plants were able to take it, without even looking at the par chart or even looking at the recommended light distances that the manufacturer suggests, right? Just going in completely blind. And that could really harm your plant if first of all, if you're not giving enough light, right? You can see the stretching happen, unwanted stretching happening, particularly during the seedling stage. You can have a slow growth, right? Because the energy of the light isn't coming down for photosynthesis, the amount that you need for good growth, or setting it too close. I mean, you just burn your plants, right? If your plants are driving too quickly type stuff and you don't have the nutrition in the medium, well, then you're seeing plant deficiencies or burning. A lot of people refer it to as top part of the plant and working its way down. A lot of people are just doing that because they're not setting the light distance. They're just going in there blind. So,
yeah, I think that's the big thing too. Is people think you have to have a par meter, you have to have all the high tech quality. A lot of these companies want to set you up for success, so they'll give you charts, they'll give you directions, they'll give you distances that you should have, things that you should know about DLI and all these other extras are really important. And I'm not saying skip those things, but the manufacturer will give you a lot of this information. It just is what it is.
Yep. Yeah, that's a very good point. Well, one thing to add to that is a shortcut people often consider is how do I get as much herb as possible? And they throw in all kinds of plants. Like you said, they'll just throw in
stuffing them in there. I'm gonna put 12 under one light and make it work.
Not being considerate of the space that you have, and just throwing as many plants as you can in there. That's a shortcut that needs to be avoided, because not only do you run out of space, you lose circulation abilities. Great spot for pests, but you've also got a number of different cultivars that are requiring a number of different treatments. Yeah. And I remember when I did that, the most plants I've ever grown was 15. And it was also the worst grow I ever had, because I simply bit off more than I could chew in pursuit of the shortcut of more herb.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, is unless you're doing something of a sea of green, and you're that's basically your training method, and you're doing this intelligently focused with a methodical approach, or you're just throwing a bunch of plants in. That's totally a shortcut that can set you up for failure. You'd almost get more yield. I've seen it firsthand. More yield from 2 highly trained quality plants, or 1 like you do, versus a bunch put in there that yield crap and have crappy small little buds. And yeah, you got a lot of plants in there and it looks cool on Instagram, but it didn't yield much. I'd rather have nice, beautiful, uniform buds. You saw with Eric and Tyler, shout out Eric Nugshots and Terpcam. They were showing 80-gallon pots, massive greenhouse, beautiful plants, but the dedication to each of these plants and how great they were trained guaranteed they'd yield more usable quality bud than larf compared to having a bunch of them put in there. It's making sure that you take that time. You don't skip all the little things of training and the vegging and the feeding and the whole process, instead of just saying, I'm going to mass cash crop and throw them all in. You got to be really, really meticulous if you got square footage of plants and you're trying to dial it in that way. You got to go like, shout out to the homie Dankum Hunters or Beans Fiend, the people who are really bones grown out there, making it happen where they've got home grows that look like commercial grows because they've got rows and rows and rows of automation and lights all set up properly because they're trying to grow a bunch, but they also have it meticulously set up. They're not just throwing shit against the wall and hoping it sticks, you know?
Got another good one here that comes to mind is what you probably shouldn't do is not sterilize your trimmers.
Oh, that's really good.
You know, that's the one that for many years I just didn't sterilize my trimmers. Just, you know, especially between plants, you know, when you're doing defoliation, you should be sterilizing your trimmers in case that plant has a pathogen, right? It could easily transfer to the next plant. So a lot of people use isopropyl alcohol now. It is often said that that's not strong enough. You need to use a bleach solution instead. That's more likely to kill off some of these pathogens. And I think the ratio is like a 1-to-10 bleach to water ratio. But yeah, sterilizing your trimmers between plants is very, very important. Hop latent viroid, it's something that we're learning about quite a bit in recent years here and how just widespread this issue is. I have no idea. I have a feeling in the past I've probably come across it before because I've had plants where nutrition was on point, lighting was on point, environment was on point, but it was still struggling. And most likely it's a virus, you know, and if I'm using my trimmers on that one to defoliate, going right over to my next one, well, then it's easily transferring over to the next plant. And so, yeah, these viruses, viroids, more and more people are hearing about it. They're impacted. It greatly reduces yield, and it can have a bunch of other negative side effects of it. So being able to sterilize your trimmers between plants at the minimum, is
really
highly
good.
recommended.
I'm glad you mentioned that. I definitely don't sterilize them in between plants on harvest, but I definitely sterilize them before I do anything. Yeah, before I get into that particular trim. That was a really good one.
You know, if you use an aeroponic cloner too, you really run into issues with that. If you're putting in HLV and you've got a situation where it's touching other plants, it's in that water, it potentially infect it. So it's a really dangerous thing there. And then sterilizing a cloner too is another thing. I didn't think about that with my traditional clone dome. I don't know why I didn't think about it, but I did with the aeroponic cloner. And I opened it up one day and it smelled like a foot. And I'm like, oh no. And I lift up and look at the roots and they're brownish. I was like, oh no, I forgot to clean it in that week. I need to pull it out there and bleach down, wipe it thoroughly and clean it out. Water sitting stagnant over time can create bacteria and pathogens. It just can happen. That's why you see a lot of times in aeroponic cloner, use something like clear res or peroxide or even bleach to essentially sterilize the water, battling against bad bacteria and pathogens. I think that skipping these steps of cleanliness is just going to hurt you down the road. You may not see it right away, but you're going to notice like little things. You're like, why is this struggling? Why is my plant not doing good? Why is it taking so long to clone? It's like, well, that invisible thing, those germs that you didn't see, well, now that ruined your garden. So then you got to start over. I know Franklin Fields, they're on the cover of USA Today because they had HLV. They were just not doing good because everybody in there is just walking around and touching plants and doing whatever they want to do and being dumb, and not paying attention. That just happens because you don't think about the fact that this thing you don't see can spread. That means a virus.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, one that you mentioned the aeroponic cloner, and it reminds me of like just a reservoir in general, right?
Clean your res,
Being able to clean out your res frequently. Now, I've done grows where I admit I didn't clean out the res once. Now, it was a water only dripping down onto organics, right? And there was no light getting into the reservoir. And I was able to get through the grow. I was just kind of pushing it. But, standard practice really is to clean out your reservoir once every few weeks, Some people do it every week if they're running bottled nutrients and they are, switching to a new week's dosage anyways, right? Some people do it every 10 days. Some people do it every 14 days. But cleaning out those reservoirs frequently is definitely going to help prevent problems from occurring, right? It could, depending on what nutrients you're using, things could like gunk up. Like I use the Blue Planet Nutrients. They had the, I think it's their B vitamin that they have, or it's a seaweed product, I believe. It's like super thick, gunks up everything. So it's like, yeah, in those cases, you definitely want to be cleaning more often than not. Now, if you have a water only in your reservoir or even some nutrients that mix in and the solution's still pretty clear, you can get away with it longer. But again, you probably shouldn't push it too hard.
I think
because it could lead to problems.
Yeah, I think to kind of tie this one together is overlooking cleanliness as a whole is something that is a shortcut that is often taken advantage of.
Laziness,
not changing, not taking off your shoes, going outside, being in your garden, then coming inside, not cleaning up the tent with the fallen leaves and the dirt and your drip pans. Water collects in those little feet in your drip pans, and if you don't clean those out, that's a great habitat for bugs. And so, just be reminding yourself of cleanliness. Don't take that shortcut. I think we can apply it to your reservoir, your tent, your genetics, or your whatever.
Well,
the first
you
one
might get away with it a few times. That's the thing is people in the comment section.
You will.
I never dealt with it. I've never had bugs. It's like, good for you, bud.
Right.
Sweet. Awesome.
Just because it's never happened before doesn't mean it won't happen again.
And prevention is the best, defense.
That's
really.
right. I think too, a shortcut, again, I get to speak from my own personal experience on this one, is trying to save money. You
frugal,
think,
baby.
or at least I thought that I could get into this and I could take the shortcut of not going all out, not getting quality products. I started with CFLs, and I realized once you buy a whole bunch of Philips CFLs, you'll end up spending as much money on those as you will for a really decent, affordable light. You can get an LED quantum board for $100 and decent. They're your Samsung
or less.
Yeah,
they have those little cheapy little spider farmers that are dirt cheap.
That's one. They're $99.99. That's the one I was thinking of.
In Canada.
Yeah.
America, we go
website.
to cheaper.
No, it's an American website.
Really?
$99.99. Yeah.
Cheaper.
It's the SF1000.
Oh, because I used your discount code. Pigeons 420.
Thank you.
That's why.
Thank you. And not getting a decent tent. I'm not saying you have to buy the top of the line everything. You can grow this plant outside with nothing but water and a little bit of food. But if you're going to take it inside, remember you're trying to replicate that environment outside. And if you're not getting at least decent products to get you to that final, it's going to struggle. You'll save money, but it'll be a struggle on your product.
Yeah, it makes sense. I've definitely had cheap equipment before. Grow tent. I've tried to get the cheapest grow tent possible. Now you get it. All of a sudden, there's a bunch of light leaks in it. If I had paid $20 more or whatever, I could have got something a lot more quality. So yeah, cheaping out. I like that one.
Yeah, it's the same thing with a lot of different inputs for nutrients. Someone's like, no, I can get that different from a different source. And it's like, it's probably a cheaper input, cheaper source. Just like a lot of cheaper food can taste comparable, but it's not as good for you.
I got another one here that I thought of. What you probably shouldn't do is take your foot off the gas pedal at harvest. Right? You still got the dry, you've still got the cure. A lot of people get to harvest, which is great to get all the way to harvest, be able to chop down that plant, but you still got more work to do. You still got to focus on the dry, focus on the cure, because you can mess that up. Lots of people mess that up, mold is huge when it comes to the drying and the curing. So whether you're drying in one of the automated boxes, like the Canatrol or the Herbs Now, it's a little bit more hands-off than it would be if you're in a tent. But in a tent, you got to ensure that humidity doesn't get too high, right? There's some air movement going on, that you're not over drying, right? You still need to focus on those things. And then once you get it over into jars, grow bags, sure, a little bit more hands off. But if you're in glass jars, C-vault, you need to be able to burp, make sure moisture doesn't build up too much. You need to be monitoring that. Moisture builds up too much, well, you could potentially get mold at that stage. You spend all that time growing the plant, harvesting, drying, for it to get ruined at the very, very end. So yeah, you probably shouldn't take your foot off the gas pedal there at harvest. Still focus on the drying cure.
Or letting it dry too much by just not checking on it.
Yep,
I've done it in the past where I didn't care about the smoke as much, I thought, until I over dried it and noticed the potential, and I was like, oh man, that would have been good if I not. And it just like you break it up and you see how the trichomes just fly away, just like your hopes and dreams for that herb.
I'd like to apply that to. It made me think of this one. Not vegging long enough either. The trying to get straight to flower, and then you can apply that to flower, rushing flower. That's something I suffered from a very long time. I think a majority of my plants for the first 4 years I was growing were harvested at week 8. So I was, just at the cusp of actually having something good, and I would chop it down, thinking rushing, getting excited, trying shortcuts. So yeah, that's really good.
You
rush
can't
it in
be
the harvest,
your plants.
rush it in the veg. You got to take your time. You got to have patience.
And just to expand on rushing the harvest, a lot of people will chop their plants early, right? I think not having a like microscope or like looking at the trichomes, and a lot of people, I don't know if everybody knows this, but like these days, your smartphone, you can take a picture and zoom in, and then see the color of the trichomes. So a lot of people aren't even buying microscopes anymore.
I didn't even know that.
You know?
What a garden hack right there, man.
So,
Get the Google Pixel or an iPhone.
Easily just take a picture as close as possible, or take a picture pretty far away and still be able to zoom in and see the color of it, but not checking the trichomes. A lot of people are harvesting early still when there could be more growth. There could be more ripeness happening in the trichomes. So yeah, that's probably something you shouldn't do, is like not utilize looking at your trichomes at harvest time. Make sure that you're harvesting at the right time when it's at the full potential where you want it. Some people want it to go longer than mostly cloudy, so they can get some amber in there, which is the CBN instead of the THC as it converted over to that. So yeah, being able to look at those trichomes, you should definitely do that.
Yeah, I totally agree, man. I've seen people who cut their plant, the whole top part, and let it veg longer underneath there or flower more. Never have ever noticed that being that great. Some people are like, I swear.
Oh, partial harvest. Yeah. I've done that before.
I think if you do it,
success.
well, I think if you do it the right way, but a lot of these people will have they never do the training. They skip what we said earlier, and they've got these nothing pieces that never developed at all. And I'm like, there's nothing there to mature more. You know what I'm saying? Like nothing started. It was so covered. You have to do that properly. The partial harvest can work, but you're better off to train your plant properly and do everything right the first place. Let it grow properly like it needs to, flower as long as it needs to, and then harvest the thing completely. Of course, partial harvest can work. I'm not knocking that. But I just think that if it's not done right, these are shortcuts that are going to just ruin your end result, where you'll be like, well, I could have had this, but hindsight sucks. Especially when you're smoking and like, man, little longer, this would have been right here. Like, it's too many times I've had that in my grow history. And now I'm just like, I'd rather go a little too long than too little. You know? I think that really, for me, for now, that summarizes most of it. I mean, if you're watching this anywhere, listening to it, drop us below in the comment section if there's some things, some shortcuts that you've done in the past that maybe have screwed you up, you know, things that you don't recommend that other growers do, so we could help people avoid these things, you know.
Generally speaking, yeah, I totally agree. Generally speaking, you know, it seems as if shortcuts are more related to laziness and not trying to get the most out of your garden. Yeah. I think it's obvious that if you give these plants a little extra attention, a little more of your time, a heck of your love and energy, they're going to succeed. And if you start taking shortcuts, it seems as if it's temporary gain, but short-term loss. And that's really what it comes to when we're looking at shortcuts. So if there's anything that you want to add to this, I think it's a good idea. Chris,
I'm looking forward to seeing the comments on that one, because I'm sure there's tons of other ones that people are going to list in the comments. So I'm looking forward to seeing what shortcuts do people take that you probably shouldn't take.
Yeah,
I want to remind everyone too about Patreon. Yeah, we do have a Patreon.
You want a shortcut to see
you want a shortcut to quality content, a great library of videos and educational content, interactions,
and to see our Vegas vlog. We're gonna have that. We working on that, boys. We're gonna put that out, or is it already out?
Yeah, it's already out. It's been out for a couple months.
Nice. No, for like 2 years.
But you can check that out. It's patreon.com/fromthestash. You can get interactive conversations with us. We get in our Discord. We kind of bounce off some ideas off of them as well. We'll say, hey, these are our topics for the next couple of days. Is there anything you guys want to add to that? And as a matter of fact, I think right now
the premium members are being scrolling across the bottom there.
They're scrolling across the bottom. So thank you guys.
Appreciate you guys, man.
Thank you guys so much for that.
Also, if you want one more shortcut to success, get you some Stash Blend from StashBlend.com.
Hey, and our merch, StashBlendMerch.com.
Nope, StashMerch.com. Oh, shit. If you want a shortcut to the website, remove blend, just do StashMerch.com. And this is a good shortcut we're giving you now.
Yeah, I think we could do another episode on, this is, I don't know what we're going to figure this out, shortcuts that don't work. I think we could definitely come up with a shortcuts video that do.
Yeah.
Oh, work. The do's and the don'ts.
Off the bat, I've got at least a list of 4 of things where it's like I know where I cut corners and it works wonderful.
100%.
Yeah,
let's do it.
No question. Let's do that. Well, guys, heck of an episode. I think we've got some subs waiting for us. You might have heard the doorbell ring halfway through this episode.
That was what that was.
That's what that was. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Let's go eat, guys. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Pigeons. That's Chris. That's Rob.
Wink on the 1s and 2s.
Winks on the 1 and 2.
Peace.
Peace.